So I'm going to talk today about what happens after product market fit. Specifically, we spent so long talking about how companies can get to this point where their product resonates in the market. I want to make the case that that's not the only thing that matters. We have right now in our industry like what I would call this epidemic of startup advice. Everyone is busy telling you everything that you need to do and what you need to do immediately. We have the pyramid of product advice. We have the road to product market fit. We have how we get to product market fit. It does not stop. We have everything from the cycle of product, the road to, the journey to, the path to, the courses on, the seminars, the webinars, the email lists. There's enough out there about product market fit, I want to say. And the reason I think this matters is because we started Intercom 7 years ago with just 4 people with no revenue, and we had a valuation we couldn't justify at all at the time. And in the past 7 years, we've gone to this sort of second stage where we're now this larger company. And I just want to say that it wasn't all product market fit. There's a shitload of other stuff you need to do too, and that's what I'm hopefully going to offer you some advice on. So, sure, at the start, when it's just you and just your product, yes, navel gaze all you want, stare deep into the soul of your database and try and make things work. But if your product actually does catch on, you'll find very quickly that you need to start this thing called marketing. And everyone hates marketing. It sounds like an expensive waste of money because when it's done badly, it very much is. But the marketing stage of a startup is exactly where you kind of define yourself, where you let the world know what you do, and where you finally have to answer this question, can I explain this thing to everyone else? The most important parts of the marketing stage of a company, for me, are these 4. First of all, you have to solve from the inside out of marketing. What I mean by that is, most of the time when we look at marketing a product, we look at this funnel, right? We have this audience of all people we might ever hope would use our product. And on the other side, we have these happy customers who are paying us hundreds of dollars a month or a year. And if you hire ye old VP of marketing, he or she will basically say, well, we need to start looking at the outside and build this audience and get them to click their ads and become visitors and trialists and customers. And they'll generally try to focus your efforts in the sort of demand generation, followed by product marketing, followed by engagement. And the danger here is that it's incredibly expensive, but it does get you good metrics immediately. You can spend a couple of $1,000s or a couple of $100,000 on a Google AdWord campaign, and next week you'll definitely have some nice dashboards to look at. They will probably be the most expensive dashboards you've ever seen, but you'll have some sense of progress or traction. I want to argue that if you spend from the left to the right, you will not see any results within marketing, but it's the easiest way to get up and running. If your customers aren't happy, if they're not engaged, if they're not profitable, if they're not sticking around for the long term, then the last thing you want to do is get more of them. That's literally how you flush through the entire market, pissing people off one at a time while they all try your product, puke, leave, and never try you again. You usually only get 1 or 2 pops at this, so it's really, really important that when they land, that they stick. The best marketing actually starts on the far side of the funnel. And it works the other direction. If your customers aren't happy and they're not sticking around, find out why. If your trialists aren't becoming customers, find out why. If your signups aren't starting a trial, find out why. That's where marketing can add most value. That's where you can sort of say, hey, we need to keep the conversation going. We need to persuade these people that there's more in this product, that they should see the value. And you work all the way out from there. So, one thing I think people often get wrong is this idea of not speaking to their customers in the language they understand, which sounds like a trite point, but oftentimes I find myself asking startups that I either advise or invest in a very simple couple of questions. Are you building the thing that you sell? And are you selling the thing that you have built? If those two are out of whack with each other, if you're building something but your marketing team is saying it's something else, that's a problem. Similarly, and there's a typo here, similarly, if your customers are buying something that you don't think you're selling, that is also a problem. There's that famous Theodore Levitt quote of the customer rarely buys what the company thinks it sells. Make sure that doesn't happen to you because it can be a problem. The thing I urge everyone to do when they're trying to ramp up marketing is to get out there and talk to customers, but not just any customers, and don't just do a survey of all your customers, but actually break them down into categories. New customers, when people sign up for your product, what are they looking for? When people quit your product, when they churn out, what went wrong? When people are on trial, what's their definition of success? When people are shopping around, how do they evaluate you against your competitor? For your active customers, what is it that they love about your product? And for the inactive customers, why do they slip away? Why do they not cancel, but they're just stopped using your product? What is going wrong here? And from these, you can actually get a really sharp definition of what the job is that people are actually hiring your product to do. And within Intercom, what we do is we consistently produce these job boards, which is basically exactly like this text here is supposed to represent what customers will agree they're buying, what the product team agrees that it's building, what the marketing team agrees it's marketing, and what the sales team think they're selling. All four need to have actually the same vision. If they do, you have this wonderful alignment where you never really go too far off course. Now, if you have any sort of degree of success, you get rewarded with this phenomenal thing called competition. And when you think about your competition, it's important to understand that it's not just the people who look exactly like you. You have three sets of competitors. You have direct competitors. They do the exact same thing as you. McDonald's and Burger King directly compete for the exact same product solved in the delivered in the exact same way. You have indirect competitors. Skype is a good competitor to business class travel because they both solve the help me talk to my colleagues who are not in the same office as me type job. And you have indirect competitors. So McDonald's and Weight Watchers compete because you can't be a customer of both at the same time, right? It doesn't, or at least you would struggle. So it's really worth understanding most products, they always focus on the red circle. They're like, oh, these people are saying the exact same thing as we're saying. But they're not the only people you have to worry about. You always have these second and third level competitors that are probably bigger market shares than your actual direct competitor, and they're almost always much more worthy of your attention. When you do find yourself in a competitive situation, either to acquire a customer or you're risking losing a customer, you have to understand what makes customers switch. What makes customers switch is four things. There's four forces that apply. Sorry, my clicker seems to be... There we go. The four forces influencing a customer switch. So there are basically two things that matter. What's attractive about the new world and what's making them stay in the old world. So the top left is what the push is. It's getting them out of their current... It's like if you're on an iPhone and you're like, oh, I hate all these expensive accessories, I want to go to Android. That's the push. Then what's the pull? What's attractive about the new world? Oh, I can sign in straight through Google or whatever. There's something attractive about Android, I'm sure. Then on the bottom, below the fold, we have what's the hesitation? Like, I want in, but I'm a bit scared. What's the anxiety here? And it's like, oh, all my cables won't work, or there's some reason why I don't want to switch. And then lastly, what's the bit of nostalgia that keeps me in my current world? Your job when you're marketing is to make the green forces larger than the red forces. So you want to increase all the attraction and take away all the risk. If the top line is heavier than the bottom line, the switch will happen. That's how you do it. And conversely, if you're under competitive pressure, you need to flip it the other way. You need to make sure that they really have good reasons to stick around. The other thing you need to bear in mind with all of these evaluations is two things. One, customers greatly overvalue what they already have. This is what's called the endowment effect. They basically value 3x the value of sticking with their current stuff, because switching is a pain in the ass. No one wakes up one day and thinks, I would love to change calendar tool today. It doesn't happen. So people are much happier in their existing world. Secondly, businesses always overvalue what it is they've created. They think, oh, this thing's amazing, you're going to love all of our extra features. And this creates a sort of 9x imbalance, right? They think their thing is 3 times more valuable, and you think your thing is 3 times more valuable. In reality, you're wrong, and it doesn't matter if they're wrong because they've already done that calculation. This kind of gives rise to the idea that your product needs to be 10 times better, because it's the point at which you can actually tip somebody over. It's not perfectly scientific, obviously, but it's indicative of the way you should think. Another area where you'll fall down a lot is if you don't understand that people shop around for your product in loads of different ways. Some people go looking to solve a problem. They say, I need to get all of my team onto the same page. They don't know what they need to do that, but they just want to get all of their team on the same page. Other people will say, I need a good project management solution. A different type of person will say, I need something better than Jira or something better than Asana or something like that. They're shopping based on competitor. And lastly, most valuably, some people will say, I actually need you, or I need your brand. So when you sneeze and someone says, like, hand me a Kleenex, that's an example of like sheer brand-based sort of value, right? You don't say, I'm after sneezing, I have mucus on my face. Please hand me something from the tissue category. That's not how people work. You know exactly what you want immediately. So what that looks like, for example, for Intercom, we have to market 4 different ways. We have to say, some people have a problem with website conversion. Some people want to talk to their customers. Some people want to switch from Zendesk, and some people want Intercom. And we need to speak to all of those people. And that's a challenge. Most people fall in love with, let's just tell you about me. Let's just tell you about my product. But that's not enough to actually persuade a large audience. The audience of people with the problem is always much greater than the other extreme, which is the audience of people who just want you. And you need to appeal to all. And lastly, within marketing, I'd say for those of you who do a lot of like A/B testing or whatever, please, please, please do not piss away the best years of your company and your lives doing irrelevant minor tests. You should default to redesign, not just optimize. That should be your default position. You won't build a billion-dollar company by tweaking your green button to be red or your red button to be green. We spend so much time working out things like, which of these 2 performs better? Spoiler, it's the bigger one, right? Which of these 2 performs better? It's the one that's in the right place. Which of these 2 performs better? It's the one you can see. We fucking know what buttons perform at this stage, right? There is this black hole that we all get sucked into of small optimizations. And you can really waste a lot of time and energy chasing minor wins. So before you do an experiment, ask yourself, how much could this possibly benefit us? And given that impact, how long will we need to run this test for? And lastly, in that scenario, is it then worth the wait? So if you're considering running a test of a red button against a green button, yes, you can run that test in 2 hours. But because the percentage improvement is so small, you will have to take so long to prove it. Alternatively, you could try a substantial change, and that might take you a lot of time to implement, but if it's a substantial change, you'll prove it a lot quicker, and you'll get a larger improvement sooner. And I think you should be open to that idea, rather than changing the word free to now, or sign up to like start your account or whatever. Take big swings, they're much more profitable. Getting product and marketing right will get you a lot of the way, as you'd guess, to product market fit and beyond. But it does get complicated if you actually hit that success. All these other people show up with all these other ideas of shit you need to do in your startup too. And that piece is generally what I call the scale stage. You hit this point where you have to like evolve a lot of your company because you realize what got you here won't get you there. Every company likes to say at the start, oh, we work off intuition. It's our core understanding of the user. And that is good at the start, but it won't scale. And in fact, even if it did scale, it's actually not a great idea. Because you as like the founder or CEO or like VP of product, whatever, you just get further and further and further from your customer, which means your intuition starts to get really, really wrong. What you need to do is have a roadmap process that helps you decide what you work on, that takes in a lot of different inputs. And that's probably the biggest change you have to make. You have to think about your competitive landscape, what your sales team are losing deals over, why people are quitting your account, why people are switching away, what your current customers are asking for, and you want them to stick around. And how you actually allocate your time here is crucial. How you actually divide your time across these is key. And it's worth saying that some of these will flare up, and some of them you have to earn. For example, if your whole infrastructure is burning down, don't get new ideas for new visionary products. Fix the problems you have. So your roadmap is kind of thrown at you, whereas in the early days, it was much more something you got to plan. A second piece is just you have to get out of this idea of pure innovation into problem solving. Innovating and problem solving are inherently different things. When you're innovating, you can afford to try speculative, open-ended ideas. It doesn't matter if they don't work out, you're just trying. Whereas when you're actually addressing a known problem, like, hey, people can't switch because of this one missing feature, you should have a well-understood outcome. You should know what shipping it looks like. You should have KPIs for success. And what you'll see happen over time is that your roadmap needs to get a lot more revenue focused. Not as in we need to start charging more, but as in we need to understand how every piece of product work will actually matter. That's what makes you an investable entity as a product team. Can we actually deliver revenue? Now, it's worth saying adding features just to close sales deals is really easy, but it will take you all the way to consulting, where that is a really, really, really broad product where your sales team have to do all the explaining because the thing itself is a mess. What consulting where it typically looks like is if you have, say, like 4 key features in your product, and then you just listen to whatever your sales blockers are, you'll end up with a shitload of features that no one uses, but they were there to get just that one customer that one time. And that's a risky place to be because it makes your product really hard to maintain. This isn't some bullshit like oh, you're such a purist or whatever. It's just you have to then pay for all that complexity of a messy product in your marketing. Your sales team have to walk through it all. It's easy to build everything customers want, but you have to act not on their request, but act on their behalf instead. It's a much better way to go. The last and probably the most important point along these lines is how to maintain your edge. A simple way to think about you versus your competitors is to think of a beach. You can set up on a beach, and if you have a sort of successful product, what you'll see is you get customers, which is great. And then you'll get a competitor, not so great. And your competitor will start to attract your customers. So what do? Well, you start to move closer to your competitor. That one feature they had, you'll copy it. That extra feature, you'll copy it. And what did they do in response? Well, they do the exact same thing. And if you play this out for long enough, what actually happens is you end up in the situation where you've now ended up looking and talking exactly like your competitor. You're now effectively a commodity, and it's entirely by your own decision. So beware of prioritizing product requests that only make you look exactly like your competition. Because soon enough, your sales team saying, we need to have this feature so that we're more like them, will turn into, we actually need to be quite different to them. And your differentiation's gone and you struggle. The last piece is just about dogma. A company is full of dogma at the start, and it needs to be. You need to kind of believe in this shared delusion. But over time, that delusion needs to morph into a reality. All the opinions in your software will come back to haunt you. In Intercom, we used to say all of these things. We don't think we should do this. We think the messenger should always or never do this. Our bot should always sound like this. When an opinion is costing you more than it's earning you, it's dogma. Good opinions attract customers. Good opinions inspire a team. They fuel your marketing. They simplify your product. Bad opinions do nothing other than cost you money. And you have to remind every opinion you hold, probably in life, should expire. They should all have a best before date because things change. A foolish consistency to yesterday's world is like the hobgoblin of a small mind. Either you kill your dogma in your company or your dogma will come back and kill you. That's everything I wanted to say. I've been Traynor from Intercom. Thank you very much.